Have you ever heard of the Great Wall of China or the Battle of Mulan? Both occurred during period 2 China. The Battle of Mulan was written during the Han Dynasty, and the Great Wall was started during the Qin Dynasty. Now note that I said started. It's going to take a long time for the Great Wall that we know today to be built. We have two main dynasties in period 2, the Qin and the Han. It is important to know these Chinese dynasties and know the order of the Chinese dynasties, so I'm going to link several videos below to help you learn the order of Chinese dynasties. What's a dynasty, you ask? A dynasty is a ruling family. So these are different ruling families that rule throughout the history of China. Now we change from one dynasty to the other through what's known as the mandate of heaven. This is basically how it works. You have the mandate of heaven, or you are blessed by heaven to rule as long as you keep winning battles. Once you lose a battle, you no longer have the blessing from heaven to rule. Therefore, the next person, or the person that defeated you, their family now has the mandate of heaven until they're beaten by someone else. So as long as you keep having victories, you keep having the mandate of heaven. Again, we have two main dynasties that we're going to talk about in period 2 China, the Qin and the Han. So let's go ahead and have a look at the Qin Dynasty. Qin Dynasty came out of the period of warring states. They're going to be the dynasty after the period of warring states, and so they're going to enforce legalism. They also have a bureaucracy for their type of government. And a bureaucracy is kind of like if government and business had a baby. It's a very top-down approach to government. You have different levels that either report up or down in the government. So think of your school. You have teachers that report up to assistant principals that report up to principal. And the principal makes the decision, and then the vice principals tell the teachers about the decision, and the teachers then do whatever the action is. So a bureaucracy is that the emperor makes the decision, and it goes down the chain to be carried out by the lower branches of the government. Or if there are problems in the lower branches, it is reported up and then dealt with in the higher branches. So again, bureaucracy is kind of like if government and business had a baby. It's a very top-down approach to government. Again, the Great Wall of China was built during the Qin Dynasty, and it was built for defense to keep nomadic groups to keep invaders out of China. A national census occurred during the Qin Dynasty. And a census is where you basically count the number of people that is in the country. In the United States, we have a census every 10 years. And so if you drive through a town and you see like population 10,000 people, they get that number from the census. So a census, again, is counting how many people you have in the country. The Qin Dynasty is going to have a standardized coin or standardized money. And the reason they do this is because after the period of warring states, all these states have different sets of money that they use, and it's hard to do business when you have different sets of money. Same problem occurred in the early United States, that all the different states were using different form of currency, and it's really hard to do business, especially close quarter business with your neighbor when you're supposed to be one country when you don't have the same set of currencies. And so we have a standardized coin, standardized currency, standardized money. The Qin Dynasty also enforces a standardized language for the same reason they enforce a standardized currency. If the emperor wants to decree something, it's a lot easier to do it in one language than in 5. And so everyone now has to learn the same language. That's basically all you need to know for the Qin Dynasty. The main dynasty for period 2 is the Han Dynasty. So if you see a test question that refers to period 2 China, it's probably referring to the Han Dynasty. So let's go ahead and look into the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty, like the Qin Dynasty, is going to have a strong bureaucracy, again, top-down system, with a strict law code. We're going to still have that legalist influence. The Han Dynasty is going to have something called the Civil Service Exam that's going to be very influential in Chinese history. Let's say that you want a job at Walmart and I'm interviewing you for the job. If I give you the job based on your qualifications, then that's civil service. If I give my cousin the job because of the connection they have to me, that's known as the spoil system. If you've studied American history, Andrew Jackson was really known for the spoil system, giving positions to people that helped him in the election. And so in China, in the civil service system, you get a job based on your merit, based on your qualifications. The best qualified one gets the job, no matter what connections you have. So the civil service exam is kind of like the ACT, that you take this test in order to place you in a job set, in order to see what type of skills, how qualified you are for a certain job. Is it entirely fair? No. Because the upper classes tend to have more access to education and could hire tutors more so than lower classes could. So in theory, this is a great equalizer. In practice, not so much. The Han Dynasty is going to bring back Confucianism, and Confucianism is going to be studied. It's going to be very influential in art and literature at that time. So if you are reading a piece of literature from the Han Dynasty or looking at a piece of art from the Han Dynasty, see if you can link it back to those Confucius values. The Han Dynasty had a public works program, and a public works program is basically when the government employs workers to build something for the good of the community. So, for example, in America, the highway system. It was built by the government. The government paid people to build the highway system to make travel easier and to make business interaction easier across the United States. So in China, they paid people to build things for the good of the community. That's a public works program. Han Dynasty had patriarchal families. And remember, I told you that you would need to remember this. Remember, a patriarchal family is when the father is in charge. The men have the power. We have a two-class system in Han China. The upper class is the scholarly gentry, and the lower class are the laborers or the workers. You think of it this way, that the top people are the smart gentries. If you know a guy named Gentry, then he would be the top of the Chinese society. He would be the smart one, the top one of the Chinese class. And then laborers, that's pretty easy to remember as the lower class. Laborers, workers, peasants, proletariat, tend to be words that we use for the lower class. So again, our class system is going to be the scholarly gentry up top, and the laborers or workers as the lower class. The Han Dynasty will expand into Korea, Indochina, Central Asia. We will see the influence of Chinese culture spread into these areas under the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty was very active in the Silk Road trade, and they traded silk primarily. They traded other things, but silk's going to be very big coming out of Han China. And silk is made from silkworms, if you don't know. It's the cocoon of the silkworm. So you have the silkworm, and when they make the cocoon, you boil the cocoon to kill the worm, and then you use the cocoon. You basically take the silk that's in the cocoon and string it out and make thread out of it. I'm going to post a video down below that can explain it better than I can. You use some visuals of how silk is made, but if you wear something silk, you're basically wearing, a worm's cocoon. We have two main inventions under the Han Dynasty. First one is paper. Paper is very important. You use paper, I use paper. I'm very glad for paper because I have several relatives that work in the paper industry. Paper is going to be very important. We have writing before this time, but the writing's done either on papyrus, such as in Egypt, or on stone. Second invention is the water mill. And a water mill is kind of like an early form of electricity. You use the water to power the mill, which powers some sort of machine. So those are our two dynasties for period 2 China. Remember the Qin and the Han, but the Han's probably the most important one. It's, has a much larger history, had much more to contribute. And so when we're referring to period 2 China, like in an essay, it's probably going to be the Han Dynasty, even though the Qin Dynasty brought many important things to the history of China. We will revisit the Han Dynasty when we talk about Rome, because the fall of the Roman Empire and the fall of the Han Dynasty are very similar. I'm going to link several videos below. Again, some songs to help you remember the order of the Chinese dynasty, something about silk making. I'm going to link a PDF to the Battle of Mulan if you want to read it, so you can see the differences between the actual Battle of Mulan and the Disney movie. Next video, we're going to be talking about Buddhism and Hinduism, so I'll see you then.